Okay. Another example of a learning style is just being flexible, right? So if you're a great student historically, I certainly suggest stick to what's working for you. But I want to share a personal experience of mine. When I was in high school, I wasn't the strongest student, and when I went to College of San Mateo, community college, I understood that, what I was doing in high school and the habits I had and the learning environments I was studying in, and the time and the stuff I took on was just a lot. It was too much, and it was not going to translate if I kept that up in college. So a big difference for me in getting to college is finding an environment that worked for me for studying. So I really utilized the College of San Mateo Library. There was no learning center at the time. Went to the San Francisco State Library quite a bit because it was open late, but I needed to find a place where I wouldn't be distracted by friends or family, or video games or TV, but all I could focus on is studying. And for me, that was really important because I didn't do really well with all the distractions around me. And I made that decision because I knew that the other method where I did have distractions or took on a lot and worked a lot just wasn't a good formula for success. So I want you to think about that and have the courage to, if things weren't working, or a strategy or that wasn't working, or habits that you developed that weren't the best, be willing to change that. Be willing to experiment and try studying in the Learning Center. Try using the math lab or the English lab or the ESL lab to support you. Another great strategy is to overlearn, right? Oftentimes, if you stop working out, you kind of lose muscle and fitness and stamina, right? Exact same is true about learning, right? You've got to put it into practice. So what's really important is that when you do learn something, be sure to utilize it and study it in a timely manner. A lot of us, we don't learn just by listening or just by seeing, or with our hands kinesthetically, or just with visuals. Sometimes it's helpful to do all of the above, right? So a strategy is speak it, write it, and visualize it. That can be really helpful, just getting those different perspectives. So again, keep on doing it. Don't just do a once over, but really, if you're reviewing something and you're taking notes, maybe you want to retype those notes or format them in a way where you can give yourself cues or clues to help you. Maybe it means reading something a couple times. So remember, practice makes perfect, as they say, and it is one of the best ways to really retain the information, right? So again, for most of us, just going over it one time isn't enough. It's sometimes 3, 4, 7 times to really retain that information. Okay. As we focused earlier, we talked about really that plan neglect strategy, and this is related in that you should really schedule some time, really focused on studying and doing that work. Okay. Most of us, it doesn't just come naturally to know and remember and memorize everything. It does take hard work and time and dedication for us to learn it. So there will be time outside of class that you have to focus and study and read. So what I also suggest is that if you are learning something, when you're getting ready to review it, make sure you do it in a timely manner. If you let too much time go by, then it's really easy not to retain that information and forget stuff. Also, be sure to plan around exams and papers when they're due, right? It gets really challenging and stressful to cram everything around, but if you, again, you chunk your time and you plan ahead, and if you're studying regularly, that will help you retain it a lot better instead of trying to relearn it at the last second. One of my favorite strategies is really trying to put the material you're learning in class in your own words. So often in higher education and education in general, there are a lot of terms and jargon and things that are used. What's really helpful is if you can simplify it and put it in your own words to be really understandable. Some people say, hey, how would you explain this concept and theory to your 8-year-old brother or your 6-year-old daughter? How can you simplify it and put it in your own words? Another thing is to kind of put yourself in the shoes of the instructor, okay? Understand their style of teaching and what are they trying to get across? What are the things that they're repeating or emphasizing or writing on the board, or what is showing up on their PowerPoint during a lecture multiple times. It's also good to talk to classmates. So what I always say in terms of building community is get to know at least 1 or 2 folks in your class, because if you ever miss class, they can have your back to help you and vice versa. But also they may hear things or see things that you might not have picked up on. So just kind of hearing their perspective on how they understand things and interpret things is really solid. And in this case, it might be good also to get a group of you in a study group. The Learning Center has great rooms which you can rent out for free and really work together to study and review things as well. The other thing is, of course, go to your instructor's office hours. And by going to your instructor's office hours, you can kind of say, hey, I'm interpreting this concept this way. Am I on the right track? What do you think? Or is there more to it than I'm relaying right now? The next principle we're going to talk about, again, this is something we touched on a little bit earlier, but I think is really important, is the prioritization. And prioritizing things is really important, right? Really focus your time and energy on what is most important. So there is a principle, again, this is adapted from Dr. John Maxwell, but the 20-80 rule, okay? So making the most out of your time, right? All of us, whether it's you or the college president or the CEO of a company or a doctor or a lawyer, we all have 24 hours in a day. So understand that really focusing on the important things that you have to learn, and 20% of the content that you get is going to make up for 80% of what you have to know, right, for a test or an exam, right? So the Pareto principle can really relate to time management. Again, 20% of your time leads to 80% of your production, right? Another great example that Dr. Maxwell says is at a party, 20% of people eat 80% of the food. In a study group, maybe 20% of the people do 80% of the work. But really maximizing your time to get the most production possible, because we do have a limited amount of resources and time. So really, there's a lot of stuff to cover and retain and read in all of the classes that you have. Chances are that 20% of the stuff is going to be a majority of what you need to understand and focus, and a big part of that is related to what we just talked about, and putting yourself in your instructor's shoes and understand what is it that they're trying to convey, and I'm going to really focus on that as well. Okay, mnemonic devices, also terrific tools to help you remember. Just last week we were talking about educational goals, and I had the image of the cat to remember the educational goals community college students have. Earning certificates, associate degrees, transfer, or all of the above. But that's a device that I use to help remember those educational goals. Another great tool is flashcards. Flashcards are great because they provide you with a visual, but it also has you write down the information, practice, and repeat. And also the auditory side. So using all those different styles and tools and senses and learning styles, flashcards can be really helpful in terms of improving your working memory and understanding the material better and just using it as another tool, right? For some of us, just reading our notes is not enough. Just putting it in more concise terms or easier ways to remember, seeing it visually. Maybe you have diagrams or pictures or visuals that help you. Flashcards can include all of that. Again, many of us are visual learners, so using videos, charts, pictures to help tell the story or trigger your memory in terms of what's covered. So I want to close out this lecture by also talking about self-care. It's important to understand Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and that's that it's really hard to be a good student, be a good employee, be a good partner, be a good family member if you're not taking care of yourself first. So before anything else, make sure that you are getting plenty of sleep and rest, that you're eating healthy, that you have time for exercise and balance in your life. Because again, if you don't have that, it makes it that much more difficult. It's already hard enough to be really an excellent student. It's hard to be a fantastic employee. It can take work to be present as a partner or as a parent. So really it starts with taking care of yourself. So please think about that as a perspective as you study, because you can't really skip steps. So think about taking care of yourself first, and the other pieces of the strategies are most effective if you are doing this. And you'll be a lot more healthy and happy. Also understand that on campus we have a lot of great resources, such as our personal counseling services that are confidential, that you can utilize as a student in the San Mateo district. Final thoughts, process, repeat, practice in the moment. Remember, it's like a muscle, use it or lose it. Keep using it so that you can utilize it in the future with Doolittle, and use the tools that he talked about. Again, just using one strategy usually doesn't work, but combining visuals, videos, writing things down, all those combinations of things can help your working memory. Really understand and know yourself and your learning styles and the time and environment that works best for you. And know that it does take work. I want to emphasize that again, is that not all of us are born naturally as geniuses or good students, that it does require the time and effort, and also the grit and the stick-to-itiveness, as my colleagues call it, that even when there will be ups and downs, just like there will be turbulence sometimes when you take a flight, but the key is to understand that those downs, those ups, they're temporary, but you've got to stay steady. So hopefully you can utilize these strategies for yourself in this class and your other classes, and we'll talk more on becoming a better student later this week.